5,000 sailors, one ship, one mission. No single military machine on the planet coordinates that many people in a space that tight and makes it work. Not an army base, not a submarine fleet, not a ground command post. The USS Gerald R. Ford, the world's most advanced aircraft carrier, just completed the longest carrier deployment since Vietnam. 315 days at sea, 4 combat theaters, through the Mediterranean, the Caribbean, the Red Sea, and the Middle East. And through every single one of those days, nearly 5,000 sailors kept that ship alive, armed, fueled, and lethal. How? How does the United States take 5,000 individual human beings, engineers, pilots, doctors, mechanics, cooks, intelligent officers, and turns them into one single fighting machine? That's exactly what we're going to break down today. And by the end, you will never look at a U.S. aircraft carrier the same way again. Here's what makes this story different from anything you've seen about carriers before. Most coverage focuses on the aircraft, the jets, the catapults, the landings. But the aircraft are only about 10% of the story. The other 90% is the human systems underneath them, the invisible machine that makes everything possible. Stay with us, because what you're about to learn is genuinely remarkable. And if you're proud of what the men and the women of the U.S. Navy do for this country, drop the word proud in the comments below. Let's see how many patriots are watching. The city that moves. Think about the town or the city you lived in. It has a mayor, a police department, a fire station, a hospital, a power plant, a post office, a grocery store. It has people who fix the pipes when they break, people who manage the roads, people who handle the money. Now put that entire city on a steel hull, 1,092 feet long, send it into the middle of the ocean, and tell it to launch and recover fighter jets around the clock, in the dark, in bad weather, under the threat of enemy action. That is what an aircraft carrier actually is. When a Nimitz-class carrier is fully manned, it carries roughly 3,200 sailors and officers as its ship's company, plus approximately 2,480 more for the air wing. The newer Ford class runs leaner, 4,660 total, but with far more automation and electrical power than any carrier that came before it. These aren't people standing around. Every single one of them has a job, a specific, trained, irreplaceable job. And the way those jobs are organized is what turns a floating steel city into the most powerful conventional weapon system on Earth. 2 crews, 1 ship. The first thing to understand is that a carrier doesn't have 1 crew, it has 2, and both have to work together perfectly. The first is the ship's company. These are the sailors who belong to the carrier itself. They keep the vessel running, they operate the nuclear reactors, manage the fuel systems, run the medical bay, handle communications, navigate the ship, maintain the weapon systems, and keep the hull from sinking. About 3,000 people working in rotating shifts, 24 hours a day, every day of the deployment. The second is the carrier air wing. These are the aviators, mechanics, and support personnel from the squadrons that come aboard when the carrier deploys. A typical air wing includes 9 separate squadrons: strike fighters, electronic attack aircraft, early warning planes, helicopter, and logistics support. Each squadron brings its own chain of command, its own maintenance crew, its own culture. Approximately 2,500 more people, all compressed into the same ship. These 2 groups, ship's company and air wing, report to different commanders. The ship's commanding officer owns the vessel. The commander of the carrier air wing, called the CAG, owns the aircraft and the flight operations. Both of them answer to the real admiral, running the entire carrier strike group. That's 3 layers of command, managing 2 separate organizations on 1 platform simultaneously. And somehow it works. The reason it works comes down to structure. Let's look at exactly how that structure operates. The chain that never breaks. By U.S. law, the commanding officer of an aircraft carrier must be a naval aviator or a naval flight officer, holding the rank of captain. No exceptions. The executive officer, the second in command, holds the same rank and the same qualifications. Below them, approximately 22 department heads, each holding the rank of commander, oversee the major functions of the ship. Each department is broken into divisions. On a nuclear power carrier, there can be as many as 120 divisions, each one with its own mission, its own personnel, and its own chain of accountability. Think about that for a moment. 120 divisions, each one a team, each team a piece of larger machine. If one division fails, It affects every division around it. If the engineering team mismanages the power output, the catapults don't work. If the catapults don't work, the jets don't fly. If the jets don't fly, the mission fails. Every single person on that ship understands this. It's not motivational language. It's operational reality. And that shared understanding is what makes a system function. Before we go any further, if this is the kind of content you value, take 5 seconds right now and hit like and subscribe. Over 98% of people watching this video haven't subscribed yet. It costs you nothing, and it means everything to a channel like ours that covers the stories America's military actually deserves. The flight deck, the most dangerous workplace in the world. At the 5-minute mark of understanding how a carrier works, most people stop at the flight deck and think, okay, they launch jets, they catch jets, that's the whole thing. It isn't, not even close. The flight deck of a U.S. aircraft carrier, it is one of the most dangerous workplaces on the planet. It is also one of the most precisely organized. And the system that keeps 500 plus people alive on that deck every single day is built entirely around color. 7 colors to be exact. Yellow jerseys are the handlers. They direct every single aircraft movement on the flight deck and in the hangar below. When you see someone on the flight deck waving their arms in front of a jet, guiding it into a catapult with focused, precise hand signals, that's a yellow shirt. The air boss himself wears yellow. From his position in primary flight control, known as pre-fly or the tower, he controls everything on the deck, in the hangar, and in the air for 5 nautical miles in every direction. Every aircraft that wants to enter that zone needs his approval, 24 hours a day. Blue jerseys are the entry-level deck workers. Their job is choking and chaining, locking aircraft tires down so a $40 million jet doesn't roll off the deck. When the ship pitches in heavy seas, they also operate the elevators that lift aircraft from the 4-story deep hangar bay up to the flight deck. Green jerseys operate the catapults and arresting gear. When a jet launches, it goes from 0 to 165 miles per hour in under 3 seconds. The green shirt makes that happen. When a jet lands, a wire across the deck, called the arresting wire, catches a hook on the aircraft's tail and stops it from going into the ocean. The green shirt manages that system too. It is not simple equipment, and the margin for error is essentially 0. Purple jerseys are the fuel handlers, sometimes called grapes by the crew. They keep every aircraft topped off, often working around running engines, in jet blast, in the dark, and rough weather. Aviation fuel is highly flammable. Purple shirts work around it constantly. Brown jerseys are the plane captains. Each one is personally assigned to a specific aircraft. They are responsible for that jet's condition at all times. They do the pre-flight inspection, they supervise maintenance, they communicate directly with the pilot before every single flight, and they stay with the aircraft until it leaves the deck. The bond between a plane captain and their aircraft is one of the most serious professional relationships in the U.S. military. Red jerseys handle ordnance, the weapons. They load missiles, bombs, and gun ammunition into the aircraft. They also serve as the first responders if a fire breaks out on the deck. Red shirts are trained crash and salvage personnel. They run toward the fire when everyone else is moving back. White jerseys are quality assurance and landing signal officers. They are the final set of eyes on every aircraft before it flies. If a white shirt sees something wrong, the flight stops, period. 7 colors, 7 teams, all of them moving simultaneously, inches from each other, on a deck the length of 3 football fields. While jets are launching and landing, every 45 to 90 seconds during peak operations, this system does not happen by accident. It was built over decades, refined after accidents and disasters, and drilled into every sailor until it became instinct. The invisible systems keeping everyone alive. Everything you see on the flight deck depends on everything you don't see below it. The engineering department runs the 2 nuclear reactors that power the entire ship. Those reactors generate enough electricity to power a small city. That power runs the catapults. It runs the elevators. It runs the radar systems, the weapon systems, the refrigeration units that keep the food cold, the air conditioning that keeps the electronics from overheating, and the desalination plants that turn seawater into fresh water that 5,000 sailors drink, shower with, and cook with every single day. The Ford class generates 250% more electrical power than the older Nimitz class. It has to. The new electromagnet catapult system known as EMALS runs entirely on electricity, not steam. The supply department feeds those 5,000 sailors 3 times a day. That means roughly 14,000 meals every 24 hours, prepared in industrial galleys, managed like a large restaurant chain, except this restaurant is moving through the ocean and it can't call for a delivery. The medical department operates a full hospital on board. Surgical suites, intensive care, dental, pharmacy, preventive medicine. 5,000 people living in close quarters for 10 months means illness spreads fast if it isn't controlled. The medical team doesn't just treat injuries. They manage the health of the entire crew, proactively. The intelligence department, known as CVIC, operates around the clock. They track threats to the ship, analyze enemy movements, brief pilots before every mission, and feed information to the strike group commander, so he knows exactly what his forces are flying into. The communication division handles secure voice and data links to every other ship in the strike group. To the fleet headquarters and to the Pentagon, they maintain satellite communications, radio systems, radar systems, and the ship's internal phone network, which is as complex as a mid-sized office building. Every one of these departments runs 24 hours a day. The carrier never sleeps. What makes it actually work? The human side. Here's the part that never gets covered. Hardware is replaceable. Software can be updated. But 5,000 human beings operating under stress, away from their families, in a floating steel environment with almost no personal space for 300 days at a time, that is the real engineering challenge. The USS Gerald R. Ford, most recent deployment, proved this harder than anyone expected. The ship departed Naval Station Norfolk on June 24th, 2025. It was originally scheduled for a standard deployment. Instead, it spent 315 days at sea, the longest post-Vietnam carrier deployment in American history. It operates in the Mediterranean. It supported operations in Venezuela. It deployed to the Red Sea and the Middle East during the Iran conflict of 2026. It endured a fire in its laundry and berthing areas in March 2026. It called for maintenance assistance 32 times in 2025 alone. And yet, the crew kept the ship operational. Sailors repaired equipment that had no right to be repairable at sea. They improvised. They adapted. They held the machine together with training, discipline, and the kind of grit that doesn't make headlines, but wins wars. That is not an accident of selection. That is the result of training pipeline that starts before a sailor ever steps foot on a carrier. Every division aboard on an airborne carrier runs a constant rotation of training, qualification, and drill. Damage control, fire suppression, medical response, weapons handling, navigation. Every sailor is cross-trained in basic emergency response, so if the unthinkable happens, every person on that ship becomes part of the response, not just the damage control teams. 120 divisions, each one trained, each one drilled, each one capable of functioning under pressure. That is why a carrier survives crisis. The numbers behind the machine. Before we close, here are the real numbers that define what this machine actually is. The USS Gerald R. Ford cost $13 billion to build. Each day at sea costs the U.S. Navy between $6 million and $8 million to operate. Over 315 days. That deployment cost taxpayers roughly $2 billion, and that doesn't include the cost of the air wing sortie operations. The flight deck spans 4.5 acres. The ship itself is 1,092 feet long. At full displacement, it weighs over 100,000 long tons, heavier than any warship ever built. It carries more than 75 aircraft. It can launch and recover aircraft simultaneously on 2 angled runways. It can generate more electrical power than most American towns, and it can do all of this for 90 days without being resupplied because its nuclear reactors don't need fuel the way a conventional ship does. There are 11 of these ships in the U.S. Navy active fleet, more than 3 times the carrier count of any other nation on Earth, and every single one of them runs on the same principle. Not the reactor, not the catapults, not the radar, but the thousands of trained, disciplined, determined Americans who show up every day and do their jobs. The real legacy. The USS Gerald R. Ford crossed the Strait of Gibraltar, heading home on May 6, 2026. After 315 consecutive days at sea, the longest carrier deployment since Vietnam, those sailors missed birthdays, they missed holidays, some missed the birth of children, some got the news that a parent or a spouse had passed while they were halfway around the world with no way to come home. They lived in tight quarters in a damaged ship through combat operations, through mechanical failures, through a fire, and they kept going. Because that is what the U.S. military produces. Not just machines, warriors who are disciplined enough to be part of something much larger than themselves. 5,000 individuals, one purpose, one machine, That is how the United States turns sailors into a war machine. If this video gave you a new respect for the men and women serving aboard U.S. aircraft carriers, hit the like button and make sure you're subscribed. Every like and subscribe tells us to keep making content like this. And there is a lot more coming. Don't miss it.